The list, the ministerial list, is finally out. President Bola Tinubu has forwarded a list of 28 names to the Senate for approval. Now, social media has been awash with a lot of comments, people wondering why there are only 28 names when the Constitution expects that there will be representation from each of the 36 states. Questions like, should we expect more names? And why were those states omitted? And when we look at the list, what does it say for representation for women in particular and for young persons? Now, to discuss the ministerial list on Rubbin Minds, I have with me a social commentator and policy analyst in the person of Michael Faluku. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Thank you for having me.
And we're also joined by a public affairs analyst via Zoom, Seun Akinyemi. Welcome to Rubbin Minds. With you,
Good
Michael.
Afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. I'll start with you, Michael. When you first saw the list of those 28 names, what came to mind? I mean, we've had to wait almost 60 days, just like the Constitution says, to see this list. Were you surprised? Were you happy with it? And what were your expectations? Were they met?
To start with, having to wait for 60 days is within the confines of what the Constitution guarantees. You know, the Constitution allows for the president to have 60 days of breather for him to come up with a list of ministerial candidates. And he has done that with a day to spare. Now, when I saw the list, the first thing that came to mind was it's a balanced list. Let's be honest. We must understand that politics and governance, they're like a Siamese twins. And often than not, when the politicking ends and the governance begin, all of those that participated in politicking will definitely, a couple of them with competence, will definitely come into governance. Because as a result of it, that's the reward of their hard work, so to speak.
Okay, so you were happy with the balance between, I'll say, bureaucracy as well as
bureaucracy,
the
technocracy, absolutely. Yes. You will look at that list. It's a list of, you know, old hands, technocrats, bureaucrats, and all of that. And if you look at what the president has said, you know, before he became president and whilst he, you know, in his, you know, assumption of office, he's talked about hitting the ground running. It's not like as if we've had, you know, instances where the ground has been hit and the running has, you know, has been achieved. But as it were now, you will see that there's a balanced list whereby if they are deployed to appropriate MDAs or ministries, as it were now, you will see that these people are, you know, to some level of or degree, competent to handle such ministries.
Okay, I'll move to Seun Akinyemi. Now, what were your impressions of this list when you saw it? Do you agree with Michael that the list is balanced between technocrats and the politicians who have been rewarded for hard work done?
To some extent, I disagree slightly with him. For me, I believe if we continue to do things the same way, we can't get a different result. This list is kind of similar to what President Muhammadu Buhari also presented in 2015, which had more of politicians. Based on the list that we currently have, we have 6 former lawmakers, we have 4 former governors, we have 3 serving lawmakers as well in that list. For me, it's more of a settlement list, more of a list to settle party loyalties, rather than what should focus more on governance and then more of technocrats. But what we have now is more of a settlement list to settle loyalists and then to settle those that work hard, just like he said, for him to get inside. But we need to prioritize governance at this critical stage. And even looking at the number of women that we have, we just have 25% of them are women. Whereas even the affirmative action stipulated in the National Gender Policy of 2006 that says that we should have at least 35% of women, and we are hoping that will be achieved probably when the second batch comes in. Thank you.
Okay, so will you be expecting a second list? And I'm saying this because we have the Constitution saying that there's representation of at least one from each state. And we have certain states that have been omitted from this list. So do you think there should be a second list? Or do you think that having 28 names might be signaling a reduction of the cost of governance and maybe the merging of ministries and MDAs in general?
Okay, thank you for that question. You see, whether we like it or not, there will be more nominees for the ministerial slot, because the president must work according to the Constitution. The Constitution says one minister nominee per state. And as it were, 11 states have been omitted from that list. So you have Adamawa, Bayelsa, Kano, Kebbi, Lagos, Plateau, Zamfara, and the likes have been omitted for that list. So I'm certain that the president will nominate more persons into those lists. Obviously, for whatever reasons best known to him, that is why we've had the first 28. However, I want to speak to what he mentioned. You talked about the demography of that list. Yes, we have 25% female, we have 75% male. We know that there's a possibility of meeting that 35% affirmative action that he has mentioned. I recall that during the
possibility in a second list.
In a second list, that's what I mean. In the second list, that's what I mean. And when we now talk about, I just want to, digress a bit when he talked about the issue of settling politicians.
And when you talk about settling politicians, I mean, one name that was surprising to at least a lot of people was the former governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, who is from the opposition party, the PDP, making that list. Does that also fit into his argument about being settled for hard work during the campaign trail?
It's a function of narrative, to be honest. It's a function of narrative. I would say, for want of argument or for a second opinion, a second narrative, that Nyesom Wike has been an outstanding governor in a state. No PDP state or no PDP governor or no PDP member will say Nyesom Wike hasn't, successfully led his state for the past 8 years and deliver. This is a man that has been named Mr. Project within his state and outside his state. Many of the politicians, as it were today, both current and former, have all, commissioned one project or the other within his state. And now, I must add to this, Nyesom Wike being on the list is, it's an indication of working across party aisle. If you recall, in 1999, President Olusegun Obasanjo himself did something similar by, working across party lines to nominate Chief Bola Ige as the Attorney General of the Federation. So I see no reason why we should, cry foul in the face of competence. I understand the argument that Nyesom Wike is an old politician, but it's an old politician that has comfortably done his work, and the testament is there for everyone to see.
Okay, I'll move to you, Shehu. And this question has to do with the feedback, or rather the answer you gave me to the last question. And is that sentiment on social media from young people that there's a recycling of politicians. There are certain names on this list that have been in government for a very long time. And some people believe that might just be a reward and just having the same old people. What does that say for our polity? Do we need more experienced hands, or should this list reflect people that may have not been given the chance but have done well maybe in the private sector?
Thank you for that. So let's say, for instance, probably I'll start from Wike, where my colleague just ended. For instance, Wike was a governor, or former governor. Wike was former governor in Rivers State. He just finished. But for me, instead of just being selfish and then just taking up all the positions, so why not nominate a star cabinet member from your cabinet and nominate him as a governor? That way you still have your power there, rather than you going there and again and recycling yourself as a political leader. You've served as a minister before. This is not your first time. You've served as a governor for 2 terms, which is 8 years. Now you are going back again as a minister. Why not nominate someone from your cabinet who worked and did very well while you were in government to become the minister and take up that position, rather than you going there again? So I think for me, that's the argument, and not you just coming there. If we continue to recycle these old people, then how do we test other people as well to get to have that experience as well? Also, even beyond that, are you saying that is some Wike that is the only highly cerebral or intellectual person in the whole of Rivers State to take up that ministerial role? Not just former governor Nyesom Wike, but the same thing also applies to Malam Nasir El-Rufai. The same thing applies to former governor David Umahi.
Okay, I'll move to you, Michael, and this is to go back to that point you made about working across party lines. Now, when you look at someone like Wike, yes, he's of the PDP, but he was very supportive of President Bola Tinubu. So are we expecting other people from the opposition that maybe did not come out in full support, but they are good at what they do and they should be given that chance. And I also want you to respond to the question about having new hands. How do these new people, whether they are young people, women that have not been in government, get that opportunity to also, what I would say, maybe strengthen their hand and contribute to national development?
Thank you for that question. I'll take the latter first. I'm a full supporter of any young person in governance. As much as we want young people in governance, we'll equally want people that will be able to do that demography proud. Now, you're talking about new hands. We have a system today, or the country as it were today, is in dire need of administrators. Literally we need to hit the ground running. Things are not going as they ought to go. And as much as we want new hands, as much as we want new faces, as much as we want, cerebral people that are new into positions, we must work with experience. We must work with experience in the sense that every minister is going to have to go and deal with a ministry. And without prejudice, the ministries themselves are the bane of where we are today. And you need competent hands that can administratively handle any ministry or portfolio assigned to them. So, yeah, the argument can be for either, either argument can work. But I would say that in this wike, for instance, in either works or transport, we can readily say what will happen in this nation. Without speaking for anyone's potential nomination or acceptance of nomination, I believe that we are at a crucible in this country where we must make certain that apart from experience, apart from knowledge, apart from competence, we have the people that have the character to deliver that role that we give to them. Because no matter if you bring a Harvard Law graduate in any ministry and they can't, work with the workforce within that ministry, their competence won't show. That is where we are.
Okay, I'll move to you, Seun, and this time is to focus on the civil service, focus on the backbone of these ministries, the permanent secretaries, the people who work in these ministries. Do you feel that they wield more influence and more power, and say the minister doesn't have as much authority or as much influence as we're attributing to that office?
Well, I think they both have their powers, they both have their responsibilities, they both have their functions. For instance, based on my knowledge, I think it's the minister that will be attending the FEC meeting. And it's at the FEC meeting that they take high-level decisions concerning each ministry, projects that will be approved, projects that will be implemented. Although, despite going for FEC meeting and getting approval, we still have people in those ministries who will be the implementers, who are the ones that will actually execute those projects. So it's more or less working in harmony that can yield the best results for each of these ministries, rather than seeing each other as enemies or being as guys. It won't really help us, but the minister should work very well and effectively with the PAMSEC, and then the PAMSEC should work well with the staff of the ministry. It's just we need a good work harmony in the ministry for those ministries to yield their best results.
And do you feel that a new hand, maybe someone who has years of experience doing administration work in the private sector, might not be able to deliver, considering all the politics in these ministries?
Well, to some extent, okay, let me go this way. When Madam Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was brought from, should I say, the private sector or from the ING, yet she delivered. Madam Obi Ezekwesili was also brought from, was not in government before, yet she delivered. So I don't really believe that when we bring people from the private sector, they won't really deliver. Even in the list that we already have people from the private sector. Does that mean they won't deliver? For instance, I think Mr. Wale Edun, chairman of Chapel Hill also, I think he is from the private sector, yet we are expecting him to perform. So that experience matters, but definitely is not really the primary thing that is expected for them to deliver. For instance, those that are coming as well, the former lawmakers that I referenced that were on the list, some of them have not been in a ministry before, yet we are expecting them to deliver. So that doesn't really, for me, is not really a major criteria.
Okay. I'll move to you, Michael, and I'd like you to respond to that, because having that political finesse or maybe being politically savvy, is that so key to run a ministry, or is it more about the competence of being able to carry out these administrative tasks and maybe also leveraging the influence they have?
I think I would agree to him, but defer to some of the things he mentioned. I think it's a function of having the experience of your environment. Our ministries today are more politicized than even politics. And you must be able or understand how to navigate within the waters of the ministry politics. Yes, they are your team. They're answerable to you. But at the end of the day, if you don't lead them rightly, accurately, you will find that whatever you get as an approval, in fact, and they are meant to implement, you don't get the right implementation. So, and I think that we must understand that these people have already been running their ministries even before the appointment of ministers. So the appointment of ministers in itself, disrupts whatever, structure that is already in place, as it were. Now, as we are now, the permanent secretary is the head of the ministry, reporting to the federal head of service. Now, when a minister comes in, it becomes the permanent secretary reporting. So there are a lot of human resource issues there, and you need competent hands, whether from the private sector or the public sector. That's why I say I agree with him. You will have people come from the private sector and fit in properly because they have human skills, they have, relational skills and all of that, and they have the competence to drive the team forward. You will have people that will come from the public sector equally that will do not too well, and we have examples of that here and there. But I'm saying that it works well for someone that has been in administration within that setting and understands the politics, the mindset, and the psyche of those that he's leading.
Okay. I'll move to you now, Sheon. And are there names that you felt should have been on this list? I know before the 59th day when the president released this list, there were certain names that were just flying all over the internet, people who are taking it upon themselves to more or less do the president's work. Do you think there are some names that should have been on this list or should be on a second list that we're expecting?
Well, to be honest, I don't really have specific names, but I just trust this government, this administration to make the best decision for us, to make the best decision on behalf of the citizens and choose the best of the people in our society to be part of those ministerial lists that will come up in the second batch. Yeah, this first batch is, let's say, it's gone, yeah, but we can still remedy it in the second batch that the people are expecting. Just like my colleague said that the 11 states have not been represented. So people that are coming from those 11 states that have not been represented, we're expecting the best technocrats from those states to emerge as the ministers that will be nominated for screening at the National Assembly. So we still believe there's still hope for us, and then we are still hoping for the best.
What about you? Do you have any particular names that you were expecting on the list?
In all honesty, I didn't have anybody in mind that, spoke to me as to making the ministerial list. However, I must point out that even when the president was, nominating special advisors, you will see the competence in the people that he wanted them to work closely with him, and you will see where his mindset is, is tilting towards. If you look at the issues with respect to ministerial lists, it's more political than even your desire as a president, because the nominations come from the states up until the federal level, and they are collated. Often than not, you are being told, oh, give me 3 or 5 names from your state, and the president or the presidency will say, oh, I want this, I don't want that, and all of that. But if it were for an individual to choose, you should look at the appointments being made by the president with regards to his special advisors, and then you will now see the level of competency that he's trying to bring to the fold. But within this list in itself, you will see there are technocrats there. Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, is one of, top 10 brilliant lawyers in this country. You can't have his name elsewhere. Even the ex-governors, David Umahi, old hand, but he did significantly well in his state. Nasir El-Rufai, the same thing. So as much as we want new faces, we must equally know that there must be a balance. There are young minds there. Dr. Betty, the female doctor from Cross River, she's an equally brilliant mind. I think she's 35 or 36 thereabout. So we have this demography being infused into that list. What we require, what we demand, is that each and everybody, upon their confirmation by the Senate, should deliver the mandate of whichever portfolio is assigned to them.
Speaking of whichever portfolio, how important is it to have that match? Is it like round pegs in round holes? Because sometimes in the past administrations, we've seen certain ministers and we're asking, why is this minister handling this ministry? Why not a different ministry? How important is that? Or is it just more about that administrative skill and being able to manage the politics?
No, I think there must be, round pegs in round holes. I think people must be matched with portfolios based on their competencies. Yes, with the former governors, you will care to think that, oh, because they've been able to oversee different ministries, different projects, different agencies, they will fit well in certain areas. But even within those former governor circles, there are certain portfolios you expect them to handle. For instance, let's take Wike. I would expect a Wike to either be Minister of Works or Minister of Transport. That way you can readily identify his input as a minister, as opposed to saying, oh, Minister of Special Duties, for instance. There are some other names like Lateef Fagbemi that I mentioned earlier. You expect him to be the Attorney General. You don't expect him to be the Minister of Labor and Productivity. I expect that the presidency will work with each of their CVs and make certain that, they are matched with their competency.
Okay, I'll move to you, Seun, and I want to know, looking at past administrations, how much impact did these ministers make? Can we expect to see measurable impact in the work of the ministers, or is it more about the ministry themselves and managing the politics that happens that might not allow them to achieve as much as they might have set out to?
Number one, even in our regular workplaces, there is office politics. And then we have to play sort of. Either you are active or inactive, for me, your inactiveness is politics. Your activeness is politics. So for you to achieve, for the organization to grow, we must play a positive politics to ensure that we are able to get the outcome that we really want. So I will encourage more of positive politics within the ministry for them to achieve the development goals that they hope to achieve, rather than playing the bad politics. Because right now, a lot has happened in the country. Our inflation rate is high, the dollar exchange rate is high, and unemployment rate is there. We have insecurity that we are battling with. So many issues that we are battling with, and it's not at this juncture that we have to be divided on who takes what glory or not. What we must be after is let's work together to achieve these goals for the development of the country. Our focus right now should be on the development of the country rather than just chasing some selfish interests or some parochial interests, because a lot is at stake right now. So all hands should be on deck for the development of the country. And then, if the ministry, if they're able to implement developmental projects that benefits the whole country, one is for the glory of the minister, is for the glory of the PAMSEC, is even the part of the glory of even the civil servants that are working in the ministry. And ultimately, it's for the glory of even the president, and even generally we Nigerians, we are the one benefiting from it. So it's of the glory of everybody. Virtually everybody will benefit from it. So it's just better to push bad politics aside and work towards the development and growth of the country at large.
Okay, I would like to ask you, Michael, can we really measure the impact of a minister? And when we look at past administrations, do any names come to mind that you'd say, okay, yes, this minister had this economic impact? I mean, is this list and the ministers that will be appointed the silver bullet to a lot of the challenges that Seun spoke about? I mean, we have a weakening naira, the naira has been floated. We also have some of the challenges with the high cost of living because of the removal of subsidy.
Right. You see, the thing is, nobody's a silver bullet until the task is handed to them and they start to deliver. In past administrations, we've had people like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala who did exceptionally well in our time. We've had, what's it called, this other woman. We've had
Obieze-Kwesili, quite a number of them.
Quite a number of them. And the point is, what do you want to be known for in your role, in your duty, in your service to the country.
What do you want to be known for?
What do you want to be known for?
I think that's a good place to bring this conversation to the end. That in itself, it's not a silver bullet, but it's what happens after they've been assigned their portfolios. Thank you very much, Michael Faluku, for joining us on Rubbin Minds. And thank you, Seun Akiemi, for your contributions on the show.